name's Mark Misic. I began working as an artist about 20 years ago. I studied at the Victorian College of the Arts, which is in Melbourne, and there I studied painting and drawing. And whilst I was at art school, I also was a tram conductor at the same time. So during the days I was at art school, at night I was a tram conductor, and I did a lot of drawing on the trams. And those experiences of being around people on the trams introduced me to a lot of ideas about our identity, which is part of the work that I do. And in Melbourne, I spent a lot of my life there, having grown up there in the western suburbs of Melbourne, around lots of military structures, such as army bases, air force bases, and ammunition dumps. But it was in the 90s that I met a group of musicians and actors and performers that I started to develop some ideas that got incorporated into my work, and that moved me away from the sort of more academic and traditional bases in my art practice that I'd learnt at the art school. So away went all the still lives and portraits that I did in a conventional way and landscapes, and I began to incorporate performance into my work. And that group of people was Teriyaki Anasaki, which was an underground techno scene in Melbourne, which was really cool and really fun and really experimental and let people off their leash, so to speak. So, and that stuff stayed with me for a long time and gave me lots of ideas, because I saw people exploring their identity in really radical and fun ways. And then from there, at the same time, I got interested in education. I was lucky enough to get jobs, teaching positions at university, working with Indigenous students in art programs, and from there I began to develop a very serious interest in Indigenous issues, along with education, which I've spent nearly about 14, 15 years developing knowledge and expertise in, and that's led me to live in communities like Maningrida and Arnhem Land, and 7 years in the Northern Territory, and now working out at Yarrabah, where I work as an art teacher. And all of those experiences, both at school and with the people in the community, have introduced me to more ideas to do with identity and how I see myself and people in the world. And I suppose the layers of interest include mythologies, the way we see ourselves psychologically and spiritually, and I suppose I've got a pretty big map. So, having worked for 20 years now, I've got lots and lots and lots of journals and notebooks that I constantly go back and access. So I end up making unconventional portraits, self-portraits, because I see people as being part of my life and my life being part of theirs. And so this exhibition, goes along and explores those themes. It navigates through a lot of my journals and ideas over a long time, but most importantly, it's a collection of a lot of thoughts in the last 10 years. The works for this show, how did I come to create them? Where did they come from? I will, as I said, look at notebooks, and out of notebooks get an idea, or I'm reading some material in things that I'm interested in, which is things like war or history or mythology or spirituality, and I just find myself going, I'm interested in that, and there's an image that I see, and I write it down, and I might forget about it, but it comes back. But essentially this show is it started about maybe 4 years ago with a group of work that I started in Paris. I went to Paris in 2008 after living in Arnhem Land for 4 years in an Aboriginal community in Northern Australia, and I was looking for some material. I was looking for a very different, just something different to counterbalance the culture shock of living in Arnhem Land. And also I saw some amazing ceremonies, spiritual practices, mortuary practices that really interested me, because I've been building up some ideas about that for a long time, and did a lot of skull studies when I was in art school. So I would put skulls of a lot of different animals on mirrors and paint them in very realistic still lives. So again, this idea is really long and old, but I was very interested in what I saw in Arnhem Land, and then I went to Paris, and I went to the cemeteries and I started photographing the cemeteries, and I was really interested in the patterns of the gates. And the gates were really decorative, and they had lots of flowers or designs or crosses or images that took me back to the motifs that I saw in the initiation practices in Arnhem Land. And to me, those gates looked like something that might have been painted on the bodies of the deceased. The translation of the works came from thinking about how, when I went to a ceremony, I was actually painted in clay with fingers, and that the finger or the hand was the first tool. So I wanted to make work like that, and I'd also seen lots of rock art, and rock art, especially that very famous indigenous hand gesture. You see in lots of rock art sites. I was really interested in that, and really interested in that as the idea of a portrait of the artist. The idea is to make a new kind of portrait, I suppose, of myself. And in a sense, the way that the line work is done is to make it more abstract, but again connected to something I'm really interested in, which is dance and performance, and maybe in some ways it goes back to trams, following lines and connections in cities.